My name is Esther Halliday. I'm 62 years old, and I've just come in from watering the roses behind my lakefront villa. As I sit here now, curled up in the old rocking chair that once belonged to my mother, I'm trying to find the words to explain how a woman like me, the kind who gives everything and then keeps giving, finally stops being a mother. You see, I raised my son Clay on my own. After my husband died in a car crash, when Clay was barely 2, I gave up the art scholarship I had fought tooth and nail for. I put aside painting dreams, weekends, vacations, and eventually, even my health. Everything I had, I funneled into raising that boy. And I did it all without complaint, at least not out loud. I was the woman who packed 2 lunch boxes every morning, one for Clay and one for myself, though sometimes mine was just crackers and a banana. I was the one who showed up at every parent-teacher conference, who worked triple shifts at the retirement home scrubbing floors, just so Clay could go to a private school where his friends had chauffeurs and summer homes in Cape Cod. I was proud of my son. I loved him fiercely, maybe too fiercely, because somewhere along the way that love became invisible, or worse, disposable. It started small, of course. A shrug when I dropped him off at school. An eye roll when I suggested he wear a sweater on a cold day. Then came the snide jokes about me not understanding his world. By the time he turned 25, I had become the ghost of someone who once mattered. Still, I held on. Then last week the phone call came. "Mom," he said, his voice sharp, tired like a man who hadn't slept or hadn't wanted to sleep. "You need to stop acting like you're owed anything. Just because you gave birth to me doesn't mean you get to cling to me for the rest of your life." Gave birth to him. The words knocked the wind out of me. I hadn't just given birth to him. I had poured every part of my being into raising him. I had stitched together a life for him with trembling hands and midnight prayers. I had fought for him when no one else would. I had given him everything. But in his eyes, I was now something to be cast aside. That was the moment I realized I was no longer his mother. At least not the way he saw it. You see, there's this quiet, horrible ache that comes when the child you raise starts to see your love as a nuisance. When they twist your sacrifices into a leash. When they look at your weathered hands and only see debt. I'm not here to beg for sympathy. I'm not here to defend myself. I'm here to tell the truth. Because if you've ever given your whole life to someone who now sees you as an inconvenience, you'll understand why I had to walk away. Why the woman sitting here in this sunlit room, breathing in peace for the first time in decades, had to stop being a mother. And why now I'm finally learning how to be Esther, not Clay's mom. Just Esther. But to understand how we got here to this silence that hums louder than any argument ever could, you need to know what came before. Before the villa. Before the betrayal. Before I became the villain in my own child's fairy tale. Because there was a time I believed that love could redeem anything. And that time nearly destroyed me. Long before the marble floors and crystal chandeliers, I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment on Ashby Street, where the heating clicked like a dying clock in the winter, and the ceiling fan creaked all night in the summer. Back then, Clay and I shared everything: a mattress on the floor, hand-me-down books, second-hand hope. I worked as a caregiver during the day and cleaned houses at night. I took on freelance clerical work on weekends, 3 jobs, no rest, and yet I never let Clay see me fall apart. Because falling apart was not an option. Not when you're a single mother. There's a code among women like me: we eat last, always. We serve the plate, we fold the clothes, we patch the school uniform with the needle we can barely see because our hands are too tired to feel the prick. But Clay got everything. A fresh lunch every day, new shoes, even when my own had holes, piano lessons he begged for and then forgot about. I even saved enough to send him to Westwood Prep, a school filled with polished boys and posh girls, where he never had to say the word scholarship out loud. And I was proud, so proud. But pride can blind you. I didn't see the way he started to change. He stopped asking me to come to parent events, said he could get there on his own, told me I didn't need to come to his debate finals because none of the other moms show up anyway. I laughed it off, told myself he was just growing up. Then came the girlfriends, always beautiful, always distant. One of them, Sierra, wore pearls at age 22, and once asked me, smiling, if I'd always been in housekeeping or if it was a recent calling. She was Clay's 3rd girlfriend, She became his wife, and she never saw me as anything more than a walking obligation. Clay didn't either, not anymore. He started pulling away financially little things at first. "I'll pay for my own phone bill now, Mum. You don't need to cover the groceries anymore. Then I think it's better if you stop helping with the mortgage. We're trying to build credit." I nodded, of course. But when I lost my job unexpectedly last fall after my longtime client passed away, and I asked if I could stay with them just until I got back on my feet, Clay hesitated. Sierra didn't. Her voice rang out from the hallway like a dagger dipped in silk. "We really thought you'd planned better than this." That was when the crack in my heart became a canyon. Still I stayed, told myself it was temporary. I had no idea that the worst was yet to come. The day I moved in with Clay and Sierra, I carried only one suitcase. Not because I had nothing, but because I had already given everything. Their house, a 3-bedroom in a polished neighborhood where the driveways were wider than the sidewalks, was ironically bought with my money. I had paid off their student loans, contributed to the down payment, funded the kitchen renovation that Sierra now bragged about on Instagram with captions like "morning coffee in our dream home, and blessed." I smiled when she posted it. I even liked it. But once I stepped into that house as a guest, not a provider, the dynamic shifted. Suddenly I wasn't Mom anymore. I was an intrusion. I wasn't offered a bedroom. Instead, they cleared out the laundry room and said, "We thought you'd be more comfortable down here, no stairs." I bit my tongue. The laundry room didn't have a window. Clay explained it away. "It's just temporary. Once Sierra's office remodel is done, we can rearrange things." I nodded. But it wasn't the lack of sunlight that hurt the most, it was the small ways they made me feel invisible. The way Sierra would correct my seasoning in the kitchen. The way she labeled all the groceries and stuck a post-it note to the fridge. "Please don't touch Sierra's almond milk." The way Clay asked me to just knock before coming upstairs. "We need our space." They never asked if I needed mine. I started job hunting the next day. Applied to dozens of caregiving agencies, but no one was hiring someone my age with a knee that ached when it rained and hands that shook when I was tired. Still, I made myself useful. Cleaned, cooked, took care of their dog, folded their laundry. When Sierra had a stomach bug, I stayed up all night with a cold compress and ginger tea. She never said thank you. One morning, I overheard them arguing. "She's always here, Clay. It's suffocating. I can't relax in my own house. She's my mom." "Then act like it. Set boundaries." That night, Clay sat me down and said we needed to rethink the arrangement. He suggested I look for live-in aide positions again. Sierra chimed in. "There's a couple in Brentwood who need someone. High salary. Great room. We could help you apply." I stared at them, trying to find the boy I raised. The one who used to curl up next to me during thunderstorms. Who cried when I burned my hand on the stove making his favorite soup. But he wasn't there. In his place was a man with a tight jaw and tired eyes, more worried about the aesthetics of his marriage than the woman who sacrificed hers to raise him. I told them I needed time to think. That night, I sat in the laundry room and cried quietly, holding a mug of cold tea. I thought of every penny I had earned, every job I had worked, every dream I had shelved, so that Clay could live this exact life in this exact house. The next morning, I put on a clean blouse, walked into the kitchen and said, "I'm moving out." Clay blinked. Where will you go?" "I'll figure it out," I said calmly. Sierra raised an eyebrow. "Do you have money?" I smiled. "More than you think." Because what they didn't know, what I hadn't told a soul, was that the woman I'd cared for, all those years, Mrs. Loretta Kendall, had left me something unexpected in her will. Something life-changing. Nearly $10 million. She had no children of her own. No nieces or nephews she liked. And as it turned out, she'd rewritten her estate months before her death, leaving the bulk of her wealth to the only person who ever treated me with real dignity. That person was me. I hadn't touched the money yet. I hadn't told anyone. I was still trying to wrap my head around it when I lost my job. But now I knew exactly what I was going to do. I was going to disappear and reappear as someone they never expected. I moved out of Clay and Sierra's house the next morning before sunrise. No fanfare, no breakfast goodbye. Just a note on the kitchen counter. "Thank you for the reminder. I forgot who I am, but not anymore." I checked into a modest hotel for a few nights long enough to speak with the lawyer handling Mrs. Kendall's estate and finalize the transfer of assets into a private trust under my name. Everything was done discreetly, quietly. My name wouldn't show up in the tabloids, no records tied to me directly, just how I wanted it. Then I began house hunting. I didn't want something garish or loud. I wanted peace, clean air, windows that welcomed light instead of blocking it out. A place where I didn't have to explain myself to anyone. I toured 12 properties before I found a villa nestled on a lakeside ridge surrounded by willows and hummingbirds. It had a garden with stone steps, a reading nook that overlooked the water, and an echo in the hallway that sounded like my mother humming. I bought it in cash. No mortgage, no banks, just a wire transfer and a firm handshake. The realtor, a young woman named Elise, smiled at me when I signed the papers and said, "Congratulations, Mrs. Halliday. You just bought freedom." She was right. In the weeks that followed, I didn't post about it. I didn't brag or call Clay or Sierra. I planted roses in the backyard, joined a local book club, and started sketching again, not well, but with a kind of joy I hadn't felt in decades. And I thought maybe, just maybe, this was my second chance. But people talk, always. Word of my purchase spread like smoke, and it didn't take long for the vultures to circle. Clay was the first to reach out. A text at midnight. "Hey, Mom, heard you moved. Can we talk?" I ignored it. The next morning, Sierra called. I let it go to voicemail. Then the emails came. Then the letters. Then the flowers, bouquets of roses delivered to my gate with notes like, "Your son loves you. Please call." But love isn't flowers after betrayal. Love is action before money. I called the security office and told them no deliveries from anyone named Clay or Sierra. Block them from visitor access permanently. Still, they tried. One afternoon, I returned from the market to find Clay leaning against the stone wall outside the entrance. He looked thinner, rumpled, like life had gotten heavy in my absence. I didn't roll down my window, but he saw me. He rushed over, placing his palms on the car hood, eyes wide. "Please, Mom, just 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." I told the driver, "Keep moving." He ran alongside the car, tapping on the window, pleading. "I made mistakes. I know I didn't realize how much I needed you until you were gone." I turned my head away. Let him shout. Let him beg. I had begged too, for respect, for kindness, for space. No one had listened. Now it was my turn to be silent. That night I received an email from a friend I hadn't spoken to in years. The subject line, "You need to see this." Inside was a link, a live stream. I clicked it, heart sinking, before it even loaded. And there he was, Clay, sitting in what looked like a bedroom, with soft lighting and a carefully chosen bookshelf in the background. His voice was raw, calculated. "I've never talked about this before, but I feel abandoned. My mother left me, after everything I did for her." I slammed the laptop shut. My blood ran cold. He wasn't just begging anymore. He was building a story. One where he was the victim. One where I, the woman who gave him everything, was the monster. I should have called my lawyer then. Should have gone into crisis mode. But I didn't. Instead, I made tea, sat at my window, and stared out at the moon. Because I knew this story, the one Clay was spinning, it had only just begun. The next morning, I woke to 37 new emails. Subject lines like, "Did you really abandon your son? Shame on you, Esther. You used your kid for money." I didn't even open them. I already knew what they contained. It only took a few seconds of searching to find the live stream replay. Over 200,000 views. Clay had titled it, "The Mother Who Cut Me Off When I Needed Her Most." The thumbnail was a close-up of his tear-streaked face. He spoke in slow, broken sentences. Wounded, measured, manipulative. "She raised me. Yeah. I won't pretend she didn't. But it was transactional. She'd remind me every time I ate her food that she gave up her life for me. I never felt like a son. I felt like a debt she wanted repaid." He paused for dramatic effect. "She didn't even come to my wedding. She didn't help us buy our first home. And now that she's rich, she acts like I don't exist." The comment section was a swarm of strangers ready to crucify me. Classic narcissist mother. "He's so brave for sharing this. She sounds emotionally abusive." It was surreal watching the son I'd carried through sickness, through hunger, through heartbreak erase me in real time. And yet, I didn't cry. I'd cried enough. Instead, I opened a folder in my drawer. One I had been building silently for years, part memory, part defense. Inside were receipts, bank statements, pay stubs, medical invoices from his childhood heart surgery, adoption papers, old thank you cards he once wrote me on construction paper with crayons. I clicked to create a new account, channel name the mom he forgot to mention. I didn't go live. Not yet. I knew how this worked. I'd watched enough public takedowns, enough TikToks that blurred truth with spectacle. I wasn't going to fight dirty. I was going to fight smart. I uploaded a single post, just one. A scanned document, official, stamped, signed. Clay's adoption certificate. Under birth parents, the field read unknown. Under adoptive parent, it read Esther Halliday. No caption, no hashtags, just the image. Within hours, it spread like wildfire. Someone recognized my name from Clay's live stream. Someone else dug up his old posts, thanking Mom for saving my life when I was abandoned. Screenshots emerged from his wedding registry, where he listed me as primary contributor. A former classmate came forward in the comments he told us he was adopted. I remember he even gave a presentation about it in 8th grade. Suddenly, the tide shifted. People were asking questions, and I had answers. The next night, I went live for the first time. Camera steady, face bare, no dramatics. My name is Esther Halliday, I said, and I didn't want to be here. But since my son has decided to share his version of our life, I figured I'd share mine. I kept it clean, no insults, no revenge. I showed documentation, photos of birthday parties, report cards I kept in a shoebox, the hospital ID band from the day I brought him home, emails confirming tuition payments, the property deed of the house they lived in with my name as the original purchaser. But I saved the real blow for last. A recording, one I had never meant to use. It was Clay's voice, clear as glass. Just get her out, he told Sierra. We'll say it's a retirement home. She won't know. Once she's gone, the inheritance is ours. That's what matters. The chat exploded. People gasped. Comments poured in. This is elder abuse. He planned to dump her. She bought them a house and they schemed to get rid of her. That night, Clay's channel was suspended for suspicious activity. His merch site crashed from mass refund demands. And for the first time since I left that laundry room, I slept like a child. But I knew better than to believe it was over. Men like Clay don't surrender. They regroup. It didn't take long. 3 days after my live stream, I received a knock on the door. It wasn't Clay. It wasn't Sierra. It was a courier. In his hand, a thick envelope. No sender name, no return address, just my name, printed in all caps, Esther Halliday. Inside, a cease and desist letter. Clay had hired a lawyer. The letter accused me of defamation, invasion of privacy, and intentional emotional distress. They threatened legal action if I didn't remove my live stream within 72 hours and issue a public apology. I laughed, out loud. Not bitter, just stunned. He had the nerve to call me a liar, after trying to ship me off like expired furniture. Still, I forwarded everything to my own attorney. He reviewed the letter with a calm professionalism I admired. We're fine, he assured me. This is bluff. If they wanted to sue, they'd already have filed. Then what is this? A scare tactic, he said. He's not trying to win. He's trying to silence you. I nodded, lips pressed tight. But Clay had underestimated something crucial. I wasn't the woman who folded laundry in a silent rage anymore. I was the woman who bought herself a lakeside villa and a second chance. And I wasn't about to roll over. Still, I didn't expect what came next. A week later, my inbox exploded. Dozens of strangers messaged me. Old neighbors, old co-workers, even women from the market I barely knew. One message stood out, Esther. You need to check this now. A link, another website, this one hosted on an anonymous server. Homepage title, The Real Esther Halliday. It was a smear campaign in HTML form. Doctored screenshots of alleged bank transfers. Fake emails suggesting I manipulated Clay's father into abandoning them. A video clip clearly edited of my ex-husband muttering, I just couldn't deal with her lies anymore. It was grotesque, professional-looking, strategic, calculated. Clay had gone full scorched earth. He wanted to bury me in shame, make me doubt what I knew to be true. And for a moment, just one moment, it worked. I sat at my kitchen table for hours that night. The sun set. The lights stayed off. My tea went cold. I thought about deleting everything, moving, starting over with a new name in a new city, maybe Maine, or the Pacific Northwest, somewhere no one knew me, somewhere I could go back to being invisible. But then I remembered who I was. I remembered the girl who left art school to raise a baby no one else wanted, the woman who cleaned hospital floors while holding her son's IV drip between shifts, the mother who kept every school project, every birthday card, every receipt, because she knew one day she might need to prove she existed. Clay wanted a war. He had one. I called my lawyer and said it's time. We filed our own lawsuit, full-scale defamation, harassment, intentional emotional distress. We sent legal takedown requests to every platform hosting his lies. We issued subpoenas for data on the anonymous site. And then I made a choice. I wasn't just going to defend myself. I was going to tell my story. All of it. Not just the version edited for public sympathy. The real one. The messy, beautiful, heartbreaking truth of what it means to give everything to someone who sees you as a stepping stone. I scheduled a live stream, promoted it simply, "This is the last time I'll speak. After this, I choose silence and peace." I didn't know who would tune in, but I knew what I had to say. I went live on a quiet Sunday night. The villa was still. The lake outside glistened under a pale moon, and the only sound in the room was the soft clink of my spoon in a teacup. I sat in front of the camera, no makeup, no filters, no music. Just me. And for the first time I didn't cry. "My name is Esther Halliday," I began, "and I'm not here to defend myself. I'm here to tell the story as it happened." I started at the beginning. I told them how Clay came into my life, abandoned in a hospital bassinet heart, murmuring skin-jaundiced left behind by birth parents who never even gave him a name. I didn't just adopt him, I said my voice steady. I rescued him. I fought for him. I named him Clay because I believed he could be shaped into something beautiful. I shared the nights I worked triple shifts to afford his surgeries, the way I hand-washed his tiny clothes at 2 a.m. because we didn't have a dryer, the Christmas I gave up my own coat so he could have a new one for school. "I don't regret any of it," I said, "not a single thing. But don't you dare say I did it to control him." I paused, looked directly at the lens. I gave him everything I had. But love, real love, doesn't come with a receipt. And it certainly doesn't come with a leash. Then I released the second bombshell notarized adoption records. Original social services paperwork. Receipts from the adoption fees. I paid myself no assistance, no charity. And then came the final strike, the full unedited video of Clay's father, my ex-husband Richard. He sat at a coffee shop looking worn and tired but clear-eyed. "My name is Richard Halliday," he began, "and I am not Clay's biological father. Esther never lied to me about that. I chose to leave because I was weak. That's on me. But she raised that boy like he was carved from her own soul." The clip ended with Richard's voice trembling. If anyone's owed anything in this story, it's her. The live stream exploded. The comment section flooded with apologies, shock, outrage, all directed at Clay. "You mean he built a whole pity campaign based on lies she saved his life? I sent him money. I feel sick." Clay's narrative collapsed in real time. By morning, his remaining accounts were gone. Donations revoked, merchandise removed. His anonymous smear site was taken down by court order. News outlets who had started to sniff around quietly dropped their mother versus son angle. And me, I didn't celebrate. I didn't throw a victory party or pop champagne. I went into my garden, sat beside the roses I'd planted when I moved in. And I wept not out of sadness or rage, but relief. Because for the first time in years, I felt weightless. But the story didn't end there. Because when a narcissist loses control, they don't disappear. They mutate, they slither. And one morning, just as the frost was starting to thaw from the windows, I opened my mailbox and found a single envelope. Canadian postage, no return address. Inside a handwritten letter. The handwriting was unmistakable. Clay. And just like that, the past knocked again. The letter was short, the handwriting shaky. "Mom, I know you hate me. I know I don't deserve a second chance. But I'm your son. Nothing changes that. I don't have money. I don't have anyone. You're all I have left. If you don't help me, I'll have no choice but to remind the world what kind of woman you really are. Clay. I stared at the letter for a long time. No tears, no gasps, just stillness. I read it once, twice, then a third time, letting every word crawl over my skin like frost. You're all I have left, if you don't help me. It wasn't a plea, it was a warning dressed up in desperation. I folded the letter neatly, walked to my study and slid it into the folder I now kept labeled Clay for legal use. Then I poured myself a glass of wine, walked out to the garden. The wisteria had started to bloom, and I sat there breathing in the silence I had earned. That was when the phone rang. Blocked number. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later it rang again. Same number. And then again. Finally, curiosity got the better of me. Hello, I said cautiously. A woman's voice on the other end, calm and professional. Is this Esther Halliday? Yes. This is Detective Sarah Clean from the Vancouver Police Department. I'm calling regarding your son Clay. My stomach dropped. The world froze around me. Is he... I couldn't finish the question. He's alive, she said quickly, but it's complicated. I sat down on the garden bench, my hand gripping the edge of the seat. Where is he? At St. Matthew's Hospital, she replied. He was admitted 2 nights ago, severe dehydration, malnutrition, and signs of a mental health crisis. The motel staff called it in. I closed my eyes. Of course, even now, even at rock bottom, Clay couldn't fall quietly. He had to pull me down with him. Why are you calling me? He listed you as next of kin. The irony was sharp. After all the betrayals, all the manipulation, all the lawsuits, I was still down on paper as his one emergency contact. You have the right to be involved in his care, she continued, or to decline. That's your decision. I didn't answer right away. My eyes focused on the lake, glistening just beyond the garden hedge. Clay was a grown man, a manipulator, a liar, but once he had been mine. A baby left in a hospital bassinet. A child who used to reach for me in his sleep. A boy who once told me through missing teeth that I was his best mommy in the whole world. Is he conscious, I asked. Barely, the detective said, but he asked for you. I said nothing, just stared into the fading light. And finally I whispered, I'll be on the next flight. Because some wars you don't fight for justice. You fight for closure. The flight to Vancouver felt like it happened underwater. I barely remember the security lines. The seatbelt clicked the quiet hum of turbulence. I remember the ache in my hands from gripping the armrest too tightly. I remember watching a woman 2 rows ahead hold her sleeping daughter against her shoulder, and how my throat tightened so sharply I thought I might choke. By the time I reached the hospital, it was nearly midnight. A nurse led me down sterile white corridors. My shoes echoed against the floor, like a metronome, counting down to something I wasn't ready for. Room 214. Take your time, she said, hand-brushing my arm. He's stable. I pushed open the door. The room was dim. Machines beeped steadily. A faint scent of antiseptic filled the air. And there he was. Clay, or what was left of him. Gaunt, pale, lips cracked. His eyes, once filled with arrogance and rage, were sunken, hollowed by whatever storm he'd put himself through. His hair was unwashed, his skin dull. He looked like a man who had been drowning for years. For a moment I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, because all the memories came flooding back. Clay at 3 dancing barefoot in the kitchen. Clay at 9 crying after breaking a school project, afraid I'd be angry. Clay at 15 calling me from the side of the road with a flat tire voice shaking. Clay at 28 telling the world I was a monster. He turned his head slowly. His eyes met mine. Mom, he rasped, barely a whisper. I stepped closer, sat beside the bed. His hand trembled as he reached for mine. I hesitated, then let him take it. His grip was weak, cold, like holding the ghost of a boy I once knew. I'm sorry, he said. 2 words, too late. But still, something. I didn't respond, because I wasn't there to offer instant forgiveness. I wasn't there to fix him. I was there to witness what remained. We sat in silence for a long time. The beeping, the machines, the shadows on the wall. Finally I spoke, quiet, careful. You need help, real help. He didn't argue. I met with the hospital's social worker the next morning. Arranged for a transfer to a long-term care facility. Not just for physical recovery, for mental health, for rehabilitation, for structure. When the doctors explained it to him, he flinched. So I'm being locked away now. No, I said calmly. You're being kept alive. I don't need your help, he spat. I didn't flinch. You don't want it, but you need it. And whether you like it or not, I'm still your mother. He turned away, refused to look at me. I didn't push, I didn't fight. Because I wasn't here for his comfort. I was here for mine. The weeks that followed were quiet, peaceful even. I flew home, tended to my garden, let sunlight pool on the floors like spilled honey, drank my coffee without dread. Clay remained in the facility. The reports were mixed, some days better than others. Progress in inches, not miles. Then one morning a message. Clay, I still don't forgive you, but thank you for not letting me die. I stared at the words for a long time, then typed back, Me, I don't need your forgiveness. I need you to survive. That's enough. It wasn't a reconciliation, but it was real, and sometimes real is the most we can ask for. There's something eerie about hospitals. Even when you're not the patient, they wrap around your body like a damp sheet. The lighting is too soft. The air always smells like bleach and old paper. But what haunts you most is the way time seems to slow down, as if the walls themselves are holding their breath. That's how I felt every time I visited Clay in the facility. The first week, he wouldn't look at me. The second, he asked for books. By the third, he sat beside me in the common room, fiddling with a pencil while I quietly read. He didn't apologize again. I didn't ask for one. Because some wounds don't heal with words. They heal with silence, consistency, space. One afternoon, the head nurse pulled me aside. He's responding to the medication. Slowly. But the deeper work, the emotional accountability, that's going to take longer. If it ever comes. I nodded. I'd already accepted that. I wasn't hoping for a miracle. I was hoping for stability. I arranged for him to move into a small transitional apartment 3 blocks from the facility. Shared unit, monitored therapy, structure but freedom. Clay didn't say thank you, but he moved, and he stayed. That was enough. Meanwhile, my life shifted back into place. I hosted my first dinner party at the villa. Just a few neighbors, people who didn't know my past, didn't care what internet circus I had escaped. They brought wine. One brought pie. We talked about books and recipes and the absurd price of firewood. For the first time in my adult life, I felt normal. I also started painting again. Badly. I didn't care. Each brushstroke felt like breathing. One crisp October morning, I sat by the lake with a sketch pad in my lap and a scarf tucked around my neck. The breeze carried the scent of damp earth and old roses. My phone buzzed. A message from Clay. 2 words, thank you. That was it. No preamble, no plea. Just acknowledgement. I hovered my thumb over the screen. I could respond, something simple, or warm, or cautious. But I didn't. Not out of spite. Out of peace. I had nothing to prove, nothing to reclaim. That silence, that choice, was the clearest boundary I'd ever drawn. And it held. But peace, like all good things, comes with an asterisk. Because people like Clay, they don't vanish. They evolve. 2 weeks later, Monica, the sales associate from the villa showroom, sent me a link. You might want to see this, her text read. I clicked. And there he was. Clay. New account, new name, new city. Same story. A series of grainy videos posted under the name Reborn Clay. Titles like, How I Survived Being Abandoned. The Pain of Growing Up with a Manipulative Parent. He'd changed his voice, softer, gentler, calibrated for empathy. He sat in front of a bookshelf again. This time with a small plant and a quote board behind him, The truth will set you free. I watched exactly 58 seconds before closing the laptop. It didn't hurt this time, because I finally understood something vital. His story was his prison, not mine. He could dress it up, repackage. It'd sell it to strangers for comfort or cash. But I had nothing left to lose. I had my garden, my sketch pad, my quiet mornings, my own name back. I didn't need to clap back. I didn't need to explain. And for the first time in a long, long time, I truly believed. I was free. Winter arrived like a whisper. The lake froze in a sheet of glass, and the roses in my garden folded in on themselves like quiet prayers. I spent most mornings wrapped in a wool shawl, sipping tea by the fire, sketching half-finished portraits of things I no longer felt the need to complete. Life had slowed to a rhythm I recognized: solitude, sunlight, stillness. Clay hadn't messaged again. And I didn't reach out. That space, that long, echoing space between us, was the most honest our relationship had ever been. There were no accusations, no expectations, no performative apologies, just distance. Until the doorbell rang. It was late, too late for deliveries, too late for unannounced guests. I looked through the peephole. Clay, standing on my porch, thinner than before, wrapped in a second-hand coat, hands jammed into his pockets. No cameras, no theatrics, just uncertainty. I didn't invite him in, but I opened the door. "Hi," he said, his voice barely audible over the wind. I said nothing. "I didn't come to fight," he added quickly. "I didn't even come to stay. I just needed to see you." I stepped aside and nodded toward the porch swing. "We're not going inside, but you can sit." He hesitated, then nodded, settling into the seat like someone who'd forgotten what furniture felt like. I sat beside him. For a while we didn't speak. The silence stretched. It wasn't heavy, just worn, familiar. "I got discharged," he finally said. "Doctor said I was stable enough to live on my own again." I nodded. "I've been working part-time at a bookstore," he added, voice brittle. "Nothing glamorous, but it's quiet." I watched the frost gather on the railing, forming soft white lace between the wood grains. "I'm not here to make things right," he said. "I know better than that." I raised an eyebrow. "Then why are you here?" He looked down. "Because I need to say it out loud, just once. Without an audience. Without a comment section." I didn't stop him. He took a breath, shoulders tightening like a child, bracing for discipline. I hated being adopted. The sentence hung in the cold air like smoke. I hated how different I felt, he continued. At school, at home, in my own skin. And I didn't know what to do with that feeling. So I blamed you for all of it. I didn't flinch. I didn't feel the silence. I was scared of being disposable, of not being enough. So I made you pay for that fear, over and over again. He looked at me then, not defiantly, not pleading, just raw. "I destroyed everything, and I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know." "I know." I studied his face, the hollows under his eyes, the cracks where pride used to live. "I'm not here to fix you," I said softly. "I'm not your redemption arc." He nodded. "I know. And I don't trust you," I added. "Not yet. Maybe not ever." "I know. But," I said, my voice steady, "I see the man you're trying to become. And that matters." He exhaled, shoulders sagging. We sat there for another hour. No grand reconciliation, no hugs, no promises. Just two broken people who finally stopped pretending. When he stood to leave, he looked back. "Thank you. For the porch. For not slamming the door." I gave a faint smile. "I almost did," I said. He chuckled. And then he walked down the path through the snow and disappeared into the dark. And me. I sat there until the wind turned sharp and the world fell silent again. Because I knew this wasn't closure. Not really. It was something else. Maybe not peace, but the fragile beginning of it. Spring came slowly that year. The lake thawed bit by bit. My garden stirred. The wisteria vines climbed back toward the sky, like they hadn't once curled up in frost, like they didn't remember the cold. And in many ways, I was just like them, healing in places I hadn't known were broken. One morning, while trimming dead branches from the rose bushes, my phone buzzed. A message. "Clay, you don't owe me anything, I know that now. But I hope you're doing okay." I stared at it. No manipulation, no guilt, just a small offering, a flicker of self-awareness from a man who once used sorrow as a weapon. I didn't respond, not out of spite, but because some wounds heal better in silence. Some connections, especially the ones built on obligation and confusion, need time, space, and sunlight to either bloom or fall away entirely. And I had finally accepted that I wasn't responsible for either outcome. Instead, I pressed my palm into the soil, felt the pulse of the earth beneath my fingertips, and returned to pruning. In the months that followed, I sold the villa. It had done what I needed it to do, protected me, sheltered me, reminded me that I had power when the world tried to strip me of it. But I no longer needed its walls to define my worth. I bought a smaller cottage closer to the coast. Fewer bedrooms, more sky. I painted the shutters blue. I baked more, laughed more, even joined an art group where no one asked me what I used to do or who I used to raise. There was freedom in being anonymous again, not because I was hiding, but because I was choosing what I revealed and what I withheld. Sometimes I'd get updates from Monica. Clay's still working at that bookstore, she told me once. He seems softer now. I nodded. I hoped so. But I didn't ask for more. Because healing doesn't mean reunion. It means you stop expecting the past to rewrite itself and learn to write the rest of the pages yourself. One crisp autumn morning, I received another message from Clay, just 2 words. Thank you. I smiled. This time I did reply. Me take care of yourself. That's all I ever wanted. And that was it. No ellipses, no promises. Just 2 people tethered by history, not hate finally understanding that not every story ends with forgiveness. Some end with truth. Some end with distance. Some, like mine, don't end at all. They just open up. To gardens. To quiet mornings. To walks on the beach and fresh coffee and neighbors who know you only as the woman with the crooked smile and a porch full of wind chimes. And in that life, this life, I am no longer a mother. I am no longer a villain or a martyr or a wounded ghost begging for affection. I am Esther Halliday, painter, gardener, survivor, and that is more than enough. The hand that no longer reaches for my son. It's the same hand that plants seeds, brushes canvas, and holds a cup of tea steady in the morning light. It's my hand, and finally it belongs to me.